Welcome back to the Fix Washington podcast, a production of the House Republican Caucus. I'm your host today, Peter Abbarno, the House Republican Chair, and with me is Dave Stuebe, State Representative out of the 17th District, and another Clark County Representative. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Pete. Appreciate
All right, so tell me and all our podcast listeners a little bit about the 17th District.
Okay, so the 17th District is down in southern Washington. We call it kind of the gateway to the gorge. So beautiful down there. We're on the Columbia River, and 17th District goes from Clark County, Skamania County, and Clickitat County.
Yeah, so it's really isolated down there along the gorge, the Columbia River.
Right.
Beautiful area, a lot of vacationing.
So beautiful down there. A lot of woods, a lot of trails, a lot of views of the river. So it's a gorgeous place.
And in addition to being a state representative, I mean, you come from local government like me.
Yes.
So tell our listeners a little bit about serving as mayor.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Retired from the Marine Corps, had to stay involved. You know, wasn't going to play golf every day and wanted to stay involved. So got into city council, did that for a couple of years.
Which city?
The city of Washougal.
All right.
So then next thing I know, I kind of got appointed the mayor and then got elected the mayor. So I've been doing that for a while. But epic, doing some great things for the city, the ports. And then was able to do a lot of, fundraising for the city. So I got to come up to Olympia a lot for a lot of our city projects. Got to go out to D.C. and had some big wins out there. Yeah. So by doing that, though, then I started to find out more about what was going on up here and wanted to get involved.
Yeah, when you say fundraising, you're talking about advocating for Washougal on places like the state budget, capital budget, transportation. So you got to know kind of the cobbling together finance plans for your city.
Well, and how to fund these things because, all these things are being imposed on cities and we have our issues. We have to work with our own police department, our fire department, our roads, our bridges, and our schools. And so it's trying to find funding for all these issues.
And what you probably learned pretty quickly is that when you're working for a city and you're trying to put together finance plans or advocating for the city, you have to work in a bipartisan manner.
Absolutely.
And that served you well up here so far, right?
I think so. I really like people that want to find solutions. Yeah. And so everybody up here has good intentions and they want to fix problems. Yeah. And so I like working with that and trying to find ways that we can work together and find solutions.
Well, and that's a good segue too, because you have worked really well trying to fix Washington on all your committees. Why don't you tell some of the podcasters what committees you sit on?
Yeah, so I got on 4 committees up here, so that's a lot for a freshman.
Well, of course, they probably entrust you.
Well, I hope so. And I've got experience, and I want to be involved in everything, and I want to find answers to a lot of problems I have. But so great committees. I'm on transportation, which is huge, and that's important for Southwest Washington. Big, because we have the I-5 bridge, we've got SR-14, we've got the Hood River Bridge, we've got the Slough Bridge. So we have the port of Camas-Washougal. So transportation is big for me, and so I wanted to be involved in that. Also on local government, which makes sense because I'm working in local government right now. So bringing a lot of things I've learned from city government up here helps out a lot with that committee. On energy and environment, and that is a great committee. There's a lot of stuff for our future, and I learned so much being on that committee. So that one has been a lot of fun. And then my other committee is healthcare. And so I have healthcare experience. And I hear a lot about the issues and the problems out there. Got a lot of family members that are in healthcare. And so I want to help bring some solutions to that too.
Well, and you just mentioned hearing about a lot of issues facing constituents in your district. What are you hearing? I mean, for me, also representing parts of Clark County, affordability seems to be a top issue. Are you hearing the same thing from your constituents?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, asking them about all the big issues and things that we can do and a lot of bills. most of it is the family. Being able to enjoy everything the state offers, which, especially being down the gorge, people want to enjoy the offerings. But all the things, all the new taxes, all the issues that we're dealing with right now, we're just taking away a little bit and a little bit at a time, and it's hurting our families. And I care about our families. I want to be able to see people happy. Being in local government, I mean, the best thing is we have a lot of parks. And so I get to see the kids and the people enjoying our amenities that we have. But it's going to be harder for them to do that because they're going to have to work harder to make more money just to do the basic needs. And that's not the way it should be. This is America. This is the state of Washington. We do really well. We should be proud of that. But when people keep taking things away from us and we can't enjoy that, that's what bothers me. So that's one reason why I'm up here.
Yeah,
I want to solve problems.
Yeah, and you mentioned taking away. I mean, one thing that is on the minds of a lot of Washingtonians is the tax package that was proposed, which would increase and create about $15 billion in new taxes, from property taxes to what you just mentioned, quality of life and joy. I mean, taxing things like Discover Passes has to have a huge impact on families that you're talking about.
Exactly. And the problem is, too, is it's not only just the Discover Pass, but then you got the Wilderness Pass. And then you got all these, the snow park passes. And you're never sure which pass you need. You have to go and check that out. So, it's making it more complicated. I want our people to really be able to enjoy a good quality of life. We're America. We should. People have worked hard. A lot of my constituents, and this is what really hurts me, is that, I've got a lot of vets. I've got a lot of seniors. I've got a lot of people that have worked really hard. First responders that have retired. And now I'm hearing these guys, and they're older, and they have put in 30 years, 25 years, and they're worried about where they're going to be able to come up with funds to stay in their homes, to go on and use the amenities that our state has to offer, and, to be able to buy groceries. That's what's really troubling, because they have done so much to give back to the people of this state, and then they can't even afford to stay in their homes. That scares me.
Yeah, I think it scares a lot of people. Since you've been up here, you've worked on a lot of different policies, some your own bills, some trying to work with others on their own policies. What's one of the favorite issues that you have or that you've worked on while you've been up here in your first year here in the legislature?
So a lot of them are kind of disappointing because I thought, you could come up here and fix things. And one of my biggest projects was the slope bridge. You're on SR14, the state highway, runs along the Columbia River, and they've done a lot of improvements on SR14. So you go from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes to cross this little bridge that takes you over into the Washougal area. But there is so much traffic on that bridge and commercial stuff. We have logging trucks that go across that. There's a cement divider. There is no room to veer around the potholes. And it's really dangerous. And matter of fact, within the last year, we already had a fatality on that bridge. And so we have been working for over 10 years. It started off as maybe a $40 million project. We're now trying to fix that thing, and it's going to cost $125 million. So one of my big things is, let's fix it now. Let's get it going because it's going to cost more money. Projects now, every year we wait, they keep going up in price, and that's everything. And so that's hard for the city to manage. That's hard for families to manage. It's hard for the state to manage.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting and really refreshing to hear you in your first year, not just talk about successes, but talk about your passion and commitment to that bridge and fixing it for the safety of and commerce of the state of Washington and your constituents. So I think that's a great a great commitment. I think constituents and our podcast listeners are going to like hearing that it's not just something that you hang on the wall. You're here to get that done.
Yeah. Well, and there are some other ones that I'm working on too. There's a lot of great people that give back, and I want to make sure that they can continue to do things for the city, for the state. I want to reward those people, but it's hard for them to do their jobs when now all of a sudden they're worried about their groceries, they're worried about, filling up their car, going off, driving to go to places where they can help volunteer and serve. And we're making things harder for people. What we need to be doing is enabling people, not enabling them, giving them the tools so they can give back. They can be a part of the solution. And I think right now, we're so worried about enabling other people and other projects that we're taking away that drive and motivation for people to do that. Yeah. And I really get excited and energized by seeing people doing great things and being part of the solution. We got to make sure we keep giving people the tools so they can do that.
Well, Dave Stuebe, State Representative 17th, thank you for joining us on the Fix Washington podcast.
All right.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Peter.
And you can learn more about Dave Stuebe at representativedavestuebe.com. And if you want to learn more about the House Republican Caucus priorities or help us stop bad bills, you can go to houserepublicans.wa.gov. And this was part of our Clark County new member edition. And up next, we're going to have John Ley, a state representative out of the 18th district, another Clark County freshman.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back to the Fix Washington podcast, a production of House Republican Caucus. I'm Peter Abbarno, state representative in the 20th district and the House Republican Caucus chair, with my good friend John Ley out of the 18th district, state representative and a freshman from our Clark County Republican delegation. John, thanks for joining us on the show.
Peter, it's great to be here. I'm loving the wonderful people I'm meeting and I'm working with, and the staff and everybody is amazing.
Yeah, John, love having you here in Olympia. You're also my desk mate on the floor, which is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And it's great as a freshman to learn from the previous experiences and the wisdom from those that have been here before. And you've learned the game well. I sit between you and Ed Orcutt, who's kind of our grand old man who's seen just about everything this legislature's offered for the past quarter century. And he has wonderful wisdom, and my job is to listen and learn from both of you.
Well, you're doing great things up here in Olympia. You represent the 18th district. You're my neighbor and our legislative districts as well. Tell some of the podcast listeners a little bit about the 18th district.
So the 18th is Clark County. We're basically east and north Vancouver, battleground, rural parts of Clark County, little slices of Ridgefield and Philida and whatnot, but basically we're the non-Vancouver of Clark County, kind of sitting in the middle in the northern part, and then you cover the ultimate northern slice of Clark County.
Yeah, and you've been, from the moment of coming here, you've really jumped in, head first on policy, working on a lot of different things. But let's talk about your committees. Tell some of the podcast listeners about your committees that you're sitting on.
Well, I love the opportunity that I've been given. Transportation was absolutely my core issue. I got involved with the citizens well over a decade ago with regards to the Columbia River crossing, learning about it, ultimately feeling that that was not an appropriate fix for the transportation problems we have. And so I just kept learning more. I came up here to Olympia for the very first time to help testify against the Columbia River crossing long ago, met legislators, and it whet my appetite. And so a decade later, I'm back. But so I'm on the Transportation Committee fighting for transportation issues and responsible spending of our transportation dollars. I'm on the Environment and Energy Committee. I love that. It's a great group of people, including you, who are on it, and it's wonderful. We've, of course, got the Columbia River, we've got Bonneville Dam, and the whole BPA system, so it's just a natural fit to be on that. And in a macro sense, it's been decades since we've upgraded our system of generating power and transmission of the power. And we know there are huge needs for more electricity in our state happening every year. And so we've got to fix the whole infrastructure, not only generating more electricity, but also handling the transmission lines and all of those things. And so it's been phenomenal to learn about all of those issues.
Yeah. So transportation, environment and energy, and any other committees?
And then my third one is post-secondary education, so I get to go back to college.
That's right. Well, and you deal with a lot of important issues because we've got colleges in Clark County.
Yeah, we've got WSU up north, and we've got Clark College. And I especially love Clark College for young kids that maybe either aren't ready for going to a full 4-year institution, but they can still advance their learning, or for those that are maybe more inclined for some of the trades or other very, very important services. And so I love working with them and addressing the issues so that we can get our young people into a skills-based set, whether they want to go on to 4 years or not. The Clark College and those community and technical colleges are such an amazing opportunity for our young people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've really taken a hold of your committee assignments and taken really advantage of it, because one of the first things you did here is passed a bill, a freshman bill. I think you were one of the first freshmen to pass a bill from the Republican caucus. It was one out of environment and energy.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. Our minority leader approached me and said, hey, believe it or not, environment and energy has an impact with regards to construction. And I'm like, what? And this is about rocks, in essence, what they call aggregate. And you use it for roads, for bridges, for sidewalks, for foundations, and constructing homes and office buildings. And half a decade ago, they passed a law that trying to make sure there was no asbestos in it. And it kind of becomes how pure is pure, how clean is clean. And they passed a standard that was unrealistic, that once enforced, they realized trucks are going to have to travel hundreds of miles, maybe even more, to deliver the aggregate you need for construction. So we dug into the policy and ultimately said we can set a little better, more realistic standard that still keeps people safe, but it will allow us to use local aggregate for building our roads, our sidewalks, our homes, and whatnot. And so delightfully, that passed almost unanimously in the House.
And what's great about that bill is that a lot of people don't realize how even bills like this will have an impact on the cost of housing and building, as well as on the environment, because as you said, it reduces the number of trips these giant cement trucks have to make to go get aggregate. So a bill that it may not be necessarily related to housing, may not necessarily be related to the environment, actually has a huge impact on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I love most, is the fact that this can lower, in a small but very important way, the cost of building new houses. And overwhelmingly, as you know, affordability is the number one issue we're hearing from everybody. And yes, there's an affordability with regards to housing, whether it's apartments or single-family homes, but on groceries and everything else. So to be able to latch onto a bill that just makes an important small reduction in the cost of constructing new homes, new roads, new sidewalks, I loved that opportunity and was very grateful for the opportunity to get that through the House.
Yeah, it's a great bill. And so one thing that you mentioned was affordability. When you get back to the 18th district, which isn't often when we're stuck in session, but when you do get back there and you're running around, affordability, I mean, for my constituents, number one issue. I'm assuming it's the same for yours.
Absolutely. Out of the park. Nobody that I've talked to hasn't mentioned it, and it's usually the first things out of their mouth. They're worried about their property taxes going up. They're worried about the cost of gas for their transportation. They're worried about accessibility to health care and doctors and medical costs going through the roof, the groceries, anything and everything that they do for their families, for their kids, for their grandkids. Everybody's being squeezed. And they just want a relief from that squeeze. And so that becomes one of the biggest challenges for us, is that we are confronted with the reality of the largest tax increase in the history of Washington State, proposed by the other party at a time when every single one of our constituents is feeling squeezed. I mean, they're having a hard time making ends meet, and we're going to make it harder for them? Heck no. And so one of the delightful stories that I had, a constituent reached out to me one of those rare days home and said, John, my gosh, they're talking about eliminating the 1% cap on property taxes. And he poured out his heart, and we talked, and I said, would you mind getting me some real numbers? And this gentleman, he's in his 70s, he's retired, he's living on a fixed income. He owns a very small house, but it's his pride and his joy. It's something like 870 square feet. It's a small, in essence, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, apartment-sized, but it's a house. And his property taxes were about $1,300 a year back in 2014. They've now jumped to over $3,000 a year, and he gave me the numbers every single year. I ran on an inflation calculator. If those property taxes had just kept up with inflation, he would have been paying $1,800 a year. So they're stealing an extra $1,200 a year out of his pocket when he's trying to make ends meet. And the reality on that is with the current 1% cap in place. So what happens when they remove that 1% cap in the growth? Oh my gosh, it's going to devastate him, either force him to sell his house and move out of state, or, he just was beside himself not knowing how to make ends meet. So I am delighted to try and help him and so many of our constituents fight to oppose that property tax cap being removed from our current state and try and make Washington affordable. We've got to fix what's broken in Washington, and that means stopping the state taking more money out of your pockets.
Yeah, and it's not just fixing it for, maybe those who are leaning towards retirement, but it seems like the American dream of home ownership, which was traditionally used to build generational wealth, to leave something behind as your retirement, is getting further out of reach, because if property taxes are high, you can't afford the mortgage, and vice versa. It's becoming difficult even for first-time homeowners.
Yeah, it's sad and frustrating on many levels. And I've shared with my constituents, you can't have affordable housing with unaffordable taxes. Yeah. And that's the problem that they are now overwhelmingly facing. And in this case of this instance, this constituent, his taxes are now approaching what his whole mortgage payment had been. And he just fears overwhelmingly that you eliminate that 1% cap, that it's going to become, in essence, a mortgage payment for the rest of his life. And it's going to tax him out of his home, and that's so wrong.
Well, John, I will say this. I think everybody on the Fix Washington podcast senses your energy, feels your energy, knows there's great things coming out of the 18th District with yourself here working on these committees. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Peter, it's absolutely a pleasure. I appreciate your passion for the people of Washington State, your knowledge and your insights. And this is an amazing team, and I'm proud to be part of it, my friend.
If you want to learn more about John Ley and his priorities, you can go to representativejohnley.com. And if you want to learn about the House Republicans' priorities or help us stop bad bills, go to houserepublicans.wa.gov. And thank you for listening to another edition of the Fix Washington podcast.
Fix Washington with Hannah Scott, a podcast from Washington House Republicans. Go to our website, houserepublicans.wa.gov. Find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube.